Quidmere Fabrication issued 4,180 POs last year, over $5,000, and we are going to do some attribute sampling to determine if there were any deviations from their controls or the controls that the policy that they've given us. So this is a real simulation from the test bank, live in the test bank right now for attribute sampling. So let's get started. First things first, read what the question actually is asking you to do. Assume the firm applies statistical attribute sampling and that any judgmental adjustments to table-derived sample sizes is not permitted. Okay, straightforward. I'm guessing we are the auditor auditing a client. Client's Quidmere. We are Ashgrove, and we're testing some controls around the purchase order flow. So we've got 4 exhibits here, and then a set of tasks to do related to that. So let's just quickly read what the exhibits are. A planning memo, a purchase policy, a client's purchase policy, our firm sampling tables, and the results of the sample that we pulled. We'll look at those later. And now to just the next thing you want to do is look through what the actual inputs that you're required to make are doing, so you can see what you're going to be looking for, what you're going to be distracted by. There'll be some distractor information in the exhibits, and we want to know, can we find out what we need to know and what we don't need to know so we can skip, not waste time on the things we don't need to know. So part A, sample size determination. So your tolerable deviation rate, expected population deviation rate, required sample size. Okay. Part B, identify the deviations. So then we're going to look at probably the results and see if they actually are deviations. And then part C, evaluation of the results. Okay. So let's glance at the memos now. So this is the exhibits now. So this is the memo that we've prepared for the year 4 interim audit. It gives us a population of all POs exceeding $5,000 issued between the first and last day of year 4. That's the year under audit. Like I said earlier, there's 4,180 of them. That's the population. This is the total dollar amount. That's the average. And the number of purchase orders below 5,000 or less than or equal to 5,000, which is not part of the population. So sampling parameters, we've got a risk of over-reliance of 5%. We've got a maximum rate of deviation the team will accept while still relying on the control of 7%. That's your tolerable rate, 7%. That's always an important number in questions like this. Rate of deviation the team expects to find, 1.5%. Okay. Other planning data, overall materiality, 890, 623. We might not need that. Let's see. Okay, so part A, tolerable rate is given to you. It's given to you directly. If you read the memo enough towards the bottom, you'll see it's 7%, not the 5%. This one's straightforward, but some of these, a lot of simulations will give you the answer. It'll be explicitly stated somewhere in one of the memos. There's nothing to calculate. You just have to know they're asking for the tolerable deviation rate. That's not exactly called tolerable deviation rate on the memo, but that's what it means, maximum rate we're willing to accept. That's just another way of saying tolerable. Okay, so the next expected population deviation rate, that was also given to us in the same table, 1.5%. Same rules apply here. The rate of deviation we expect to find, expected population deviation rate. So it's just stated a little differently, but pretty straightforward. Required sample size per table S2A. So there's going to be, in our firm documents, a couple of tables. And this one's telling us table S2A, what our population needs, or what our sample size needs to be based on the deviation rate, the tolerable deviation rate and the expected deviation rate. So we expected 1.5%. We tolerate 7%. The sample needs to be 103. That's it. Part A is done. Part A is meant to be easy. The answers, other than that last one, the answers are just given to you just by wording. Part B, identify deviations. Okay, so we've been given in one of these exhibits the results. It looks like 4 deviations, or 4 notes, not deviations. 4 flagged items that we need to determine. Was this a deviation from the control that is in the purchase policy, which we might as well read now since that goes hand in hand with the results. Purchase orders with total value exceeding $5,000 may not be transmitted to a vendor until it has been approved. And then here are your approval rules. Anything less than $5,000 requires no approval. Okay, pretty common setup in the real world. So controller has no limit to approve POs. So if the controller approved it, as long as it's before it's been transmitted to a vendor, then there's no finding there. Controller has final authority. That goes from a lot of places. Deputy controller, the assistant controller, the controller's right-hand man, $50,000 limit when the controller is absent or otherwise unavailable. So if they're on vacation, paternity leave, something like that. VP of Ops, $25,000, no conditions. They can just approve up to $25,000. And the purchasing supervisor, $10,000. Capital items only, not valid for materials or services. There's some notes below that. Approval may be evidenced by either A, a manual signature and date on the approval block, printed PO, or B, an approval action recorded under the approver's user ID in the Procure Link workflow system. 3.4, a requisitioner may not approve a PO that the requisitioner originated. You can't approve your own originated or requested item. That's fine. And 3.5, signed POs and workflow approval logs are retained for 7 years. Great. Let's go back to the results and see which ones of these are an actual deviation from the policy. So item over here on the right, where your inputs are, item 24, 41, 67, and 88. Those are the 4 flagged items for review. So let's figure out whether this is a deviation that's being tested. So the answer is going to be yes or no for each of these, right? Yeah. Okay, so number 24, $18,400 PO. Approval block signed and dated by the deputy controller 2 days before the vendor transmits. So the deputy was up to $50,000 only when the controller is gone. Otherwise, the controller should have been approving this. The controller's calendar and HR leave records show the controller was on approved leave for that entire week. Okay, so this is not a deviation because the controller was unavailable. So the deputy controller could approve this because it was under $50,000. Number 41, printed PO located in the vendor file. Approval block is blank, so there's no signature. No entry for PO appears in the Procure Link approval log. Buyer states that the order was placed by telephone to meet the production deadline. We don't care about somebody's production deadline. There was no Procure Link approval, and there was no wet ink signature on the PO itself. I don't care about like whether this person had like it was below their limit or not. This was above 5,000, so it needed to go through the PO process one of 2 ways: either a wet ink signature or the Procure Link. So this is a yes. This is a deviation. Number 67, approval block is blank. Procure Link shows an approval action recorded 4 days before the transmission under the user IDs. Okay, so 4 days before, it didn't happen after. This one is good. It's got the procure link log. This is a no, not a deviation. And the last one, 88, neither the printed PO nor any workflow could be located by the client after 3 requests. No alternative evidence of the approval was obtained. That's a yes. That's a deviation. There's no approval anywhere. And it's above 5,000. So the last question in part B, total number of deviations. Like that's just what we've answered up here. There's 1 and 2. That's it. Part C, evaluate the sample. So what was the deviation rate? That was 2 out of the total sample of 103. According to our sample table, we've done 103. So 2 divided by 103, round to 2 decimals, as it says here. That's 1.94%. 1.94, because it's got to be given in percentage. Upper deviation rate, that per table S2B should be, let's see, our sample was 103. Our deviations found is 2, so meet in the middle is 6%. Yeah, 2 decimal points. 6.00. Let's just do that just to make sure. No, okay, it automatically moves. It doesn't matter. It's a 0. Allowance for sampling risk. That's not the difference between the tolerable rate and what we found, 1.94. That's the difference between the deviation rate and the 1.94. So 6 minus 1.94, 4.06%. Conclusion on the sample. So this is a drop down. Let's just see what the answer option is. It's like answering a multiple choice question. Looks like we got 2 of them to round out round out the sim. So the upper deviation rate does not exceed the tolerable rate. That's true. The upper deviation rate exceeds the expected rate. Yeah, the expected rate is 1.5. The upper deviation was 6. So yes, it does. But the sample does not support the reliance on the control. So the upper deviation rate is 6%. Our tolerable rate, that's what you remember from the very beginning, is 7%. So we are within the tolerable rate. The 6% is less than that. So we can rely on this. We don't have to do any further procedures, at least for this one. That's why I like A here. I don't like B. Let's see what C says. The sample deviation rate does not exceed the tolerable rate. What was the sample deviation rate? It was 1.9. But yeah, it doesn't. The sample supports reliance without further consideration of sampling risk. The sample is inconclusive because deviations were found. That's never right. Like you can find deviations and you can still conclude. It doesn't necessarily mean inconclusive. So A is the answer. The sample supports the reliance on the control as we've planned it, or as the planning memo has suggested. So the last question here, effect on the planned substantive procedures for purchase. Let's read the options. Proceed with the substantive procedures at the planned nature, timing, and extent as the assessed control risk is supported. That sounds good to me. Increase the extent. Now, don't do anything. You don't have to increase. You don't have to change anything because of the outcome, because of the results of this. The results were good. They showed the control was working and that the deviations that we found were not enough to change anything. So any of the items that are telling you to do something, move something, change something, those can be discarded. Move all substantive testing of purchases to year end. No, don't do anything. Report the deviations as material weaknesses. No. You can report the deviations as deviations. Material weakness requires a lot more than that. So I'm going to take that first one. The assessed control risk is supported. And let's grade it. That's a lot of green. Good. Yes, all of ours were correct. All 13 were correct. And the section at the end of the grade, it will tell you how to attack. Now, you could have seen this before. All questions, all sims come with this, well, not sure where to start. Here's how to attack it. If you get hung up, we all get hung up. There's no shame in using this. It doesn't give away any of the answers. It just gives you guidance on where to start, how to approach the question. But below, at the very end, there's a real benefit down here. Like, it'll give you what specifically the exhibits were baiting you with, what they were trying to trick you with, the distractor information, the little tricks and loopholes that you might not have thought of. They're explained here. And you can see that on every task-based simulation in the test bank. Go drill some right now, chatcpa.io.